Episode 6 of Invasion Season 3, titled Marilyn, takes a step back in time to fill in the blanks about Infinitas and its mysterious leader Verna. After last week's shocking reveal that Infinitas wasn't just some rebellious hacker group, but actually a dangerous alien worshipping cult, many fans were eager to see how this strange organization came to exist. This episode tries to answer that question by showing us Verna's backstory and how her beliefs were shaped during the earliest days of the alien invasion. While it's an emotional chapter with some haunting scenes, it's also a slower and more drawn-out episode that doesn't fully hit the mark. Still, it gives us some insight into why Verna sees the aliens not as monsters, but as saviors, and why Infinitas became such a dangerous threat in the present storyline. The story is framed mostly as a flashback, taking us 2 years earlier, right at the start of the alien invasion. The world was still confused and scared, with survivors huddled together in small groups, trying to make sense of what was happening. This setup immediately gives the episode of zombie apocalypse vibe, with desperate people stuck in claustrophobic spaces, unsure whether to fight, run, or pray. For Verna, the invasion wasn't just chaos, it was also deeply personal. She was already grieving the loss of her sister Angie, and her pain made her vulnerable to seeing meaning where others only saw horror. When the aliens tried to communicate, Verna interpreted their voices and visions not as threats, but as signs of divine power, almost like a religious experience. The episode opens with Joel and his mother, who are caught in a frightening alien encounter. This tense sequence ends tragically with Joel's mother being killed, leaving the boy traumatized and alone. Verna steps in to take care of him, which becomes an important relationship throughout the episode. Unfortunately, as compelling as this could have been, Joel and Verna don't have the strongest chemistry on screen. Since we already know where Joel ends up in the present timeline, his scenes don't carry as much suspense. Still, his loss helps explain why he later becomes so tied to Verna, seeing her as both protector and guide. Much of the middle portion of the episode takes place in a church where a small group of survivors has gathered. The choice of location is symbolic. Since the church is already a place of faith, hope, and belief, and now it becomes the setting where Verna's transformation begins. The survivors include different personalities, the strong and practical one, the timid one, and a pastor who quickly proves to be overwhelmed by the situation. In fact, the pastor ends up being one of the weakest characters in the story, unable to lead and eventually taking his own life under the crushing pressure. His death creates a leadership vacuum, and Verna naturally steps into the role, not because she is forceful, but because she remains calm and steady in the middle of panic. As time goes on, Verna begins to have her own encounter with the aliens. One moment in particular changes everything for her. She experiences what looks like a swirling portal-like alien presence that speaks in multiple voices. Among these voices is one that belongs to her dead sister Angie. The shocking part is that this voice knows details only Angie could have known, things from their past that no outsider could guess. This makes Verna believe completely that the aliens are not only real but also possess God-like powers capable of connecting her with her lost sister. War. From her perspective, the aliens are not enemies, but messengers of salvation, beings that can bridge the gap between life and death. Of course, for the audience, this revelation is more complicated. We've seen enough of the aliens to suspect that they aren't benevolent gods. It's much more likely that they are tapping into the minds of the humans they've killed, downloading memories and experiences, and then repurposing that information in their communication attempts. To us, it's a manipulation tactic. To Verna, it's a miracle, and that difference in interpretation becomes the foundation of Infinitas' ideology. The church survivors surprisingly go along with Verna's perspective. Instead of seeing the aliens as monsters to fear, they start to accept the idea that maybe the invaders are here to guide humanity into a new era. This is where Verna's influence grows, as she begins to shape her grief and her vision into a kind of new religion. She uses language that sounds like traditional religious preaching, talking about salvation, unity, and higher purpose, but instead of worshiping God, she is preaching devotion to the aliens. This is the seed of what would eventually become the Infinitas cult we see in the present. The episode tries to build sympathy for Verna by showing us how her pain, her grief, and her desperate need for hope pushed her toward this belief system. On some level, she didn't want to accept that her sister was truly gone forever. The aliens gave her a glimpse, a voice that sounded like Angie. And that was enough for her to construct a worldview where the invasion wasn't the end of humanity, but the beginning of something new. Whether it's misguided or manipulated doesn't matter to her. Emotionally, it filled the hole in her life. As the story shifts back to the present day, near the end of the episode, we see how much Verna has changed since those early days. The calm, grieving woman from the church is now a hardened, almost radical leader who commands loyalty and speaks with absolute conviction. The jump feels a little jarring, almost like we missed the middle part of her transformation. One episode isn't quite enough to explain how she went from desperate survivor to full-blown cult leader who believes in alien salvation with every fiber of her being. The tonal whiplash makes her character arc feel a little rushed, even though the episode's goal was to humanize her. The most frustrating part of episode 6 is that it doesn't push the main story forward. Instead of building on the destruction of the alien mothership or exploring the aftermath of Infinitas' latest moves, we pause for an extended flashback. While some of the backstory is useful, it also drains some of the mystery out of Infinitas. Sometimes, not knowing the full details makes villains scarier, and by spelling everything out, the show risks making Verna less interesting. We now know why she thinks the aliens are gods, but that doesn't necessarily make her scarier. It just makes her more misguided. Another weak point is how thinly drawn most of the other characters are. Outside of Verna and Joel, the church survivors barely register as people. They're more like stereotypes. The tough one, the meek one, the pastor who can't handle the truth. without more development. It's hard to care about their fate or believe in their decision to follow Verna's lead so quickly. This makes the episode feel even slower because we're stuck with side characters who don't have much depth. That said, the idea at the heart of Marilyn is fascinating. How grief and trauma can completely change how someone interprets reality. While most people saw the aliens as monsters to be fought, Verna saw them as saviors to be worshipped. That difference in perspective explains how Infinitas could grow into a dangerous cult so quickly. To outsiders, it looks like madness. To insiders, it feels like hope. That tension makes Infinitas a unique kind of threat, not just a human enemy, but one whose belief system is tied to the aliens themselves. By the end of the episode, when Joel boards the helicopter and Verna consolidates her radical leadership, we're left with a clearer idea of what the heroes are up against. Infinitas isn't just a group of humans trying to survive. It's a movement built on faith in the aliens. And that makes them unpredictable, dangerous, and difficult to stop. Still, there's no denying that this episode will divide fans. Some will appreciate the attempt to give Verna depth and backstory. Others will feel that the pacing dragged and that too much time was spent on a flashback instead of pushing the current storyline forward. Or, what is clear is that the war in Invasion isn't just humans versus aliens anymore. It's also humans versus humans, with belief systems clashing just as violently as armies.